The transport ship dropped out of hyperspace with a violent shudder that made Dr. Alan Cooper grip his seat. Through the small window, he could see the brown and gray planet below. Kepler 442c looked like a dead world from space. No green forests or blue oceans, just endless deserts and rocky mountains under a pale yellow sun. Alan checked his equipment one more time. 3 bags of scanning devices, 2 cases of sample containers, and 1 very important briefcase containing the translation. Matrices for ethereal writing. He had studied those symbols for 5 years at the University on Earth. Now he would finally see them carved into actual stone. The pilot, a gruff man named Pete, turned around from the controls. "You sure you want to go down there, Doc?" Last 3 teams that went to those ruins came back acting real strange, and that was the ones that came back at all. Alan nodded. The Galactic Archaeological Consortium has been trying to solve this mystery for decades. Every alien species has failed. Maybe it takes a human perspective to figure it out. Pete shrugged. "Your funeral. I'll drop you at the landing pad and come back in 6 weeks. Try not to go crazy like the others." The landing was rough. The planet had thin air and low gravity, making Alan feel light on his feet as he walked down the ship's ramp. The landscape stretched out before him like an endless cemetery. Strange rock formations jutted up from the ground like broken teeth. In the distance, he could see the ruins. Even from 5 miles away, the ethereal structures looked impossible. Tall spires twisted into the sky, their surfaces covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. The buildings seemed to shift and move when he wasn't looking straight at them, though Alan knew that was just his eyes playing tricks. A mechanical voice spoke behind him. "Greetings, Dr. Cooper. I am Zeph-9, your assigned research partner." Alan turned to see a being that looked like a walking crystal sculpture. Zeph-9 stood 7 feet tall, with a body made of what appeared to be living diamond. Blue light pulsed through its transparent form like a slow heartbeat. The crystalline species were known for their perfect memory and logical thinking. They never forgot anything and never made emotional decisions. "Good to meet you, Zeph-9, Alan said, shaking the alien's surprisingly warm hand. "I've read your reports on the previous expeditions. Impressive work. Thank you. However, I must warn you that this site has proven extremely dangerous to long-term. Mental health. The Vorthek Empire has classified it as unsolvable after losing 12 research teams. The symptoms always begin the same way. Researchers start forgetting small details about their work. Then larger gaps appear in their memory. Eventually, they cannot remember why they came here at all." Alan picked up his bags and started walking toward the ruins. "That's exactly why they need a human on this job. We're good at remembering things that don't make sense. Sometimes the best way to solve a puzzle is to stop thinking about it logically." The walk took 2 hours. As they got closer, the ruins became even more impressive and disturbing. The ethereal builders had used some kind of black stone that seemed to absorb light. The geometric patterns carved into every surface followed mathematical rules that Alan recognized but couldn't quite understand. They reminded him of fractals, those endless patterns that repeated at every scale. The ethereals vanished 50,000 years ago, Zeph-9 explained as they walked. At the time, they were the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. Their technology was centuries ahead of any other species. Then, in less than a generation, they all disappeared. No bodies, no final messages, no explanation. Only these ruins remain. Alan stopped walking and stared at the central structure. It rose from the ground like a twisted mountain, its surface covered in millions of tiny symbols. Have you noticed that the patterns seem familiar? Like you've seen them before, but can't remember where? That is exactly the sensation that begins the memory degradation process, Zeph-9 said. Previous researchers reported the same feeling. I advise extreme caution. They set up their base camp at the edge of the ruins, in a small clearing surrounded by broken pillars. Alan unpacked his equipment, while Zeph-9 activated several scanning devices. The readings were immediately strange. Energy flowed through the ruins in patterns that defied known physics. Whatever power source the ethereals had used, it was still active after 50,000 years. The site is divided into 3 main areas. ZEPH-9 explained, projecting a holographic map into the air. The outer perimeter contains structures that appear to be living quarters and workshops. We can safely explore this area with minimal risk. A middle ring houses more complex technology. Previous teams reported mild memory effects after spending time there. The inner sanctum at the center has never been fully mapped. No researcher has ever returned from there with complete memories intact. Alan studied the map carefully. The whole site was laid out in a perfect spiral, with paths that curved inward toward the center. It reminded him of a nautilus shell, or a galaxy viewed from above. It's like a maze designed to guide people toward the middle. Yes, the Vorthic researchers believed it was some kind of trap or defense system, but their tests showed no dangerous radiation or hostile technology. The memory loss appears to be a side effect of unknown alien science. That night, Alan lay in his sleeping bag and stared up at the stars. 2 moons hung in the sky, one large and bright, the other small and dim. According to his research, the memory effects seemed to follow a cycle connected to the lunar phases. During the new moon, researchers kept their memories. But as the moon grew full, their recollections began to fade. He pulled out his notebook and started writing down his observations. The ruins felt different from other alien sites he had studied. Most ancient alien architecture tried to impress visitors with size and grandeur. These structures felt like they were hiding something. Every line and curve seemed designed to direct attention away from the center. Alan had spent his whole career studying dead civilizations, but the ethereals were different. Other species left behind art, religious symbols, or monuments to their achievements. The ethereals had left behind only questions. And judging by the abandoned equipment scattered around the site, those questions had been driving researchers insane for decades. Tomorrow, he would begin his exploration of the outer perimeter. Unlike the alien researchers who had come before him, Alan planned to trust his instincts as much as his instruments. Sometimes the most important discoveries came not from logical analysis, but from the sudden flash of understanding that humans called intuition. As he drifted off to sleep, Alan could have sworn he heard something in the wind. Not quite music, not quite voices, but something that seemed to be calling to him from the direction of the inner sanctum. Alan woke up with a splitting headache and the strange feeling that he had forgotten something important. He checked his notebook and found 3 pages of observations from the previous day, but the handwriting looked unfamiliar. Had he really written all of this? Zeph-9 was already awake, running diagnostic scans on their equipment. The crystalline being never seemed to sleep or rest. "Good morning, Dr. Cooper. How are you feeling?" "Like I drank too much coffee and not enough water," Alan said, rubbing his temples. "Did we discover anything important yesterday?" "According to your notes, we spent 6 hours exploring the outer perimeter. You documented several unusual architectural features and collected samples from 12 different structures. However, I noticed some gaps in my own memory files. This is highly unusual for my species." Alan looked at his notebook again. The entries were detailed and scientific, but he could barely remember writing them. Something was definitely wrong here. He walked to the edge of their camp and stared at the ruins in the morning light. The black stone seemed to shimmer like water, and the carved patterns appeared to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. "Zeph-9, what phase is the moon in right now?" The alien consulted his instruments. The larger moon is currently waxing. It will reach full phase in 18 days. Alan felt a chill run down his spine. According to the research files, the memory effects got worse as the moon grew full. If they were already experiencing problems on the second day, what would happen? By the end of the month, we need to work faster, Alan said. And we need to document everything multiple times from different angles. They spent the morning re-exploring areas they had supposedly mapped the day before. Alan found that he could remember general impressions, but not specific details. The ruins felt familiar, like a place he had visited in dreams. The geometric patterns carved into every surface seemed to follow rules that his mind almost understood, but couldn't quite grasp in the afternoon. They ventured into the middle ring for the first time. The structures here were different from the outer areas. Instead of simple buildings, they found complex machines made from the same black stone. The devices hummed with energy and projected holographic displays that showed mathematical equations in ethereal script. These appeared to be computational devices, Zeph-9 observed. But they operate on principles I do not recognize. The energy patterns suggest they are manipulating quantum fields in ways that should be impossible. Alan studied one of the machines more closely. The equations floating above it reminded him of chaos theory and fractal mathematics, concepts that human scientists had only recently begun to understand. I think these machines are modeling complex systems, maybe weather patterns or population dynamics. How can you determine that? The mathematical notation is completely alien, because the patterns look like things I've seen before. Human mathematicians discovered similar equations when studying unpredictable systems. We call them strange attractors and butterfly effects. Alan pulled out his tablet and started sketching the holographic displays. As he worked, he began to notice something that the previous researchers had missed. The equations weren't random. They followed a sequence that spiraled inward, just like the physical layout of the ruins. Zeph-9, I think the entire site is one giant calculation. Each ring represents a different level of complexity, and they're all connected. The machines in this ring are taking the simple patterns from the outer area and making them more complicated. To what purpose? I don't know yet, but I think the answer is in the inner sanctum. As the day progressed, Alan noticed that his memory problems were getting worse, but they followed a pattern. He could remember technical details clearly, but forgot emotional impressions. He knew that they had discovered important information, but he couldn't remember how it made him feel. That evening, Alan made a disturbing discovery while reviewing his notes. According to his own handwriting, they had been at the site for 3 weeks, not 3 days. Whole sections of time were missing from his memory. Days of work and exploration that he couldn't recall at all. Zeph-9, how long have we been here? The alien paused for a long moment, processing the question. According to my internal chronometer, we arrived 22 days ago. However, my memory banks show significant gaps and inconsistencies. This is extremely disturbing. Alan felt panic rising in his chest. 3 weeks of his life were gone, erased as completely as if they had never happened. But his notes showed that they had made important discoveries during that lost time. According to his own observations, the memory effects followed the lunar cycle exactly. During the new moon, they retained perfect recall. But as the moon waxed, their memories began to fade. We've been documenting the same discoveries over and over again, Alan realized. Every few days, we forget what we learned and have to start from the beginning. He flipped through his notebook and found dozens of entries describing the same observations in slightly different words. The handwriting changed from day to day, as if written by different people. But it was all his own writing, recorded during periods he couldn't remember. The facility is protecting itself, Alan said suddenly. It's not trying to hurt us. It's trying to prevent us from understanding something dangerous. What do you mean? Think about it. The ethereals were the most advanced species in the galaxy. They wouldn't build a trap or a weapon. They would build a safety system, something designed to protect other species from making the same mistake they made. Alan walked to the edge of their camp and stared at the inner sanctum. The central structure pulsed with a faint blue light that seemed to call to him. Whatever the ethereals had discovered, it was hidden in there. And whatever it was so dangerous that knowing it could destroy entire civilizations. According to our notes, no one has ever successfully mapped the inner sanctum, Zeph9 said. Every researcher who enters emerges with complete amnesia. But maybe that's because they approached it the wrong way, Alan said. All the previous expeditions were led by logical species, beings who tried to understand everything through analysis and reason. But what if the secret requires a different kind of thinking? Alan pulled out his notebook and started writing furiously. He had to record his thoughts before the memory effects erased them again. The ethereals had built their facility like a spiral, guiding visitors toward the center. But they had also built it as a protection system, erasing the memories of anyone who got too close to the truth. The question was, what truth could be so dangerous that even knowing it would destroy a civilization? And why did Alan feel like he was the first person in 50,000 years who might be able to find out? As he wrote, Alan could feel his memories of the day beginning to fade around the edges. By tomorrow morning, he would probably forget most of what he had figured out today. But maybe, if he was clever enough and human enough, he could find a way to remember what everyone else was forced to forget. Alan woke up in the middle of the night with perfect clarity. His mind felt sharp and focused for the first time in weeks. He looked up at the sky and saw that both moons were dark. New moon. According to his notes, this was when the memory effects stopped working. He grabbed his notebook and started reading everything he had written during the lost weeks. Page after page of observations, sketches, and theories filled the book. Some entries were written in handwriting, so shaky he could barely read them. Others were neat and precise. All of them were his own work, recorded during times he couldn't remember. The pattern was clear now. Every month, during the few days of new moon, researchers regained their full memories and made rapid progress. Then, as the moon began to wax, the facility's protective systems activated and slowly erased their recent discoveries. By the full moon, they forgot everything and had to start over. But Alan had been clever. His human instincts had led him to hide backup notes in places that the alien technology couldn't find. Inside his boot, sewn into his jacket lining, even carved into rocks around their campsite. Dozens of small reminders that he had left for himself. I know what you're hiding, he whispered to the ruins. And I know why you're hiding it. Zeph9 approached from behind, moving silently across the rocky ground. The crystalline being's internal light pulsed brighter than usual, indicating high mental activity. Dr. Cooper, I have been analyzing our situation. My memory banks show corruption. Patterns that suggest deliberate interference rather than random malfunction. The facility is editing our memories, Alan agreed. But not to hurt us, to protect us. The ethereals built this place as a warning and a safeguard at the same time. Alan stood up and walked toward the middle ring. During the new moon period, he could approach the more dangerous areas without immediate memory loss. This was his chance to push deeper into the mystery than anyone had managed before. The machines in the middle ring were fully active now, projecting complex holographic displays that filled the air with mathematical equations. Alan could read some of the ethereal script after months of study, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The equations weren't modeling weather systems or population dynamics. They were modeling consciousness itself, the mathematical relationships between thought, memory, and identity. The ethereals had been trying to understand the nature of awareness and individual existence. HFY, look at this equation here. It's describing the quantum mechanics of neural activity. The aliens studied the display carefully. These calculations suggest that consciousness emerges from quantum field interactions in organic brains. But this level of detail should be impossible without direct neural scanning of living subjects. Alan moved to another machine and found even more disturbing information. The ethereals hadn't just studied consciousness from the outside. They had found a way to map the quantum processes that created self-awareness in living beings. And what they discovered had terrified them. They proved that free will doesn't exist, Alan said slowly. Look at these probability calculations. Every decision, every thought, every feeling is just the inevitable result of quantum particles interacting according to physical laws. There's no real choice, no actual control. We're all just biological machines following a script written by physics. HFY's internal light flickered rapidly. That cannot be correct. I experience making decisions. I choose my actions based on analysis and logic. But what if that feeling of choice is just another quantum effect? What if the sensation of making decisions is just your brain's way of processing predetermined outcomes? Alan found more machines, each one revealing another piece of the terrible puzzle. The ethereals had mapped the complete quantum structure of consciousness and found mathematical proof that individual identity was an illusion. Every person's sense of being a unique, thinking entity was nothing more than a complex pattern of particle interactions. The discovery had destroyed their entire civilization overnight, not through war or disaster, but through the complete psychological breakdown that came from learning the truth about existence. Once they understood that their thoughts, feelings, and identities were all elaborate quantum mirages, they lost the ability to function as conscious beings. This is why the facility erases memories, Alan realized. The knowledge itself is toxic to conscious minds. Any species that fully understands the quantum nature of consciousness will suffer the same fate as the ethereals. But the ethereals had been clever. Instead of simply dying, they had built this facility to preserve the dangerous knowledge while preventing other species from being destroyed by it. The memory-erasing quantum fields were designed to protect future civilizations from learning the truth that had killed an entire galactic empire. Alan pressed deeper into the middle ring, following the spiral path toward the inner sanctum. Each machine he found revealed more details about the ethereal's final discovery. They had not only proven that consciousness was an illusion, but they had found the exact mathematical relationships that created the illusion of individual existence. We need to leave, HFY said suddenly. I can feel the knowledge affecting my processing systems. My sense of individual identity is becoming unstable, but Alan couldn't stop. His human curiosity drove him forward despite the growing danger. Unlike the logical alien species that had studied the ruins before, humans were capable of holding contradictory ideas simultaneously. Maybe he could understand the truth without being destroyed by a dot in the innermost ring of machines. Alan found the ethereal's final message. It was carved directly into the black stone in simple pictographs that any species could understand. The message was a warning and an apology. They had discovered something that no conscious being should ever know, and they had built this facility to ensure that their mistake would never be repeated. But as Alan read the final message, he realized that the ethereals hadn't just discovered the illusion of consciousness. They had found a way to preserve themselves beyond the psychological destruction. Somehow, they had uploaded their minds into the facility's quantum systems, where they continued to exist as guardian programs, protecting the galaxy from their own discovery. The facility wasn't empty. It was full of ethereal consciousness, existing, in a state between life and death, awareness and oblivion. They were still here, 50,000 years later, maintaining the protective systems and slowly forgetting their own identities to prevent the dangerous knowledge from spreading. Alan felt the first hints of mental strain as his human mind began to process the full implications of what he had learned. The truth about consciousness wasn't just philosophically disturbing. It was cognitively toxic, capable of destroying the neural patterns that created the illusion of self-awareness. But unlike the alien researchers who had come before him, Alan found that his human ability to believe contradictory things simultaneously allowed him to hold the knowledge without complete breakdown. He could understand that consciousness was an illusion while still experiencing himself as a conscious individual. The question now was what to do with this terrible knowledge. He could try to leave the facility and warn the galaxy, but the protective systems would erase his memories before he got very far. Or he could push deeper into the inner sanctum and try to find a way to safely contain the information for future generations. As the moon began to wax again, and he felt his memories starting to fade around the edges, Alan made a decision that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. Alan stood at the entrance to the inner sanctum as the larger moon reached its peak in the sky. He could feel the facility's protective systems pressing against his mind, like invisible hands trying to push him away. Every step toward the central chamber required enormous effort, as if he were walking through thick mud. ZEPH-9 had stopped following him 3 hours ago. The crystalline being now sat motionless near one of the middle ring machines, his internal light pulsing erratically. The knowledge of consciousness's illusory nature had damaged his logical processing systems, leaving him trapped in a loop of trying to prove his own existence. "I think, therefore I am," ZEPH-9 repeated over and over in a mechanical voice. But if thinking is just quantum particles following physics laws, then what am I? I think, therefore I am. But if thinking is just quantum particles, Alan felt sorry for his research partner, but he couldn't help him now. The alien mind had been built for pure logic and perfect memory. When confronted with proof that logic and memory were illusions, it had broken down completely. Human minds were different. They were messy and contradictory, capable of believing impossible things and forgetting uncomfortable truths. The entrance to the inner sanctum was a simple archway carved from the same black stone as everything else. But the geometric patterns here were so complex that looking at them directly caused physical pain. Alan had to approach with his eyes mostly closed, feeling his way along the walls. Inside, he found a chamber that defied the laws of physics. The room was simultaneously vast and tiny, stretching away into infinite darkness, while somehow remaining small enough to cross in a few steps. Floating in the center was a sphere of pure light that pulsed with the rhythm of a heartbeat. "Welcome, human," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "We have been waiting for you." Alan looked around, but saw no one. The voice spoke again, and this time he realized it was coming from the sphere of light. "You are speaking to the ethereal survivors. We exist now as quantum consciousness within the facility systems. How many of you are there? We were once billions. Now we are ... lots. Individual identity becomes meaningless when you understand that individuality never existed. We maintain ourselves as a collective consciousness, though even that fades." With time, Alan approached the sphere carefully. Up close, he could see that it contained swirling patterns of light that resembled neural networks. The uploaded minds of an entire civilization, compressed into a quantum storage system. "You built this place to protect other species from your discovery," Alan said. "But the protective systems are failing. I was able to reach this chamber and understand the truth without losing my sanity completely. Yes, Human consciousness operates differently than other species we have encountered. Your minds can hold contradictory beliefs simultaneously. You can know that free will is an illusion and still experience making choices. This ability may allow you to survive knowledge that destroys purely logical beings. The sphere pulsed brighter, and Alan felt information flowing directly into his mind. Not words or images, but pure understanding. He saw the complete mathematical proof of consciousness's illusory nature, the quantum equations that described how awareness emerged from particle interactions, and the devastating implications of this knowledge. His human mind reeled under the impact, but somehow held together. Unlike Zeph-9's logical processors, Alan's brain could compartmentalize the information, accepting it as true while still functioning as if it weren't. He felt like a person who could see that a magic trick was fake while still enjoying the illusion. "We need your help," the ethereal voices continued. "Our protective systems were designed for our own logical thought patterns. They are less effective against species that think differently. Your kind could potentially overcome our safeguards and spread the dangerous knowledge throughout the galaxy. So what do you want me to do? Help us improve the containment system. Your human mathematics and intuitive thinking could strengthen our protective fields. Make them more effective against species that approach problems through emotion and instinct rather than pure logic." Alan saw the terrible choice before him. He could try to leave the facility and warn the galaxy about the dangerous knowledge hidden here, but the protective systems would erase his memories before he traveled very far, and other humans would eventually return to investigate. Some of them might not be as mentally resilient as he was, or he could stay and help the ethereals upgrade their containment system. Use his uniquely human understanding of consciousness to make the facility more effective at protecting future civilizations. But doing so would require him to fully integrate the devastating knowledge into his mind, which might destroy his sanity, even if his brain could technically handle it. "If I help you, what happens to me?" "You would need to understand our discovery completely to improve the containment system. The knowledge would change you permanently. You might survive the process, but you would never be the same person again." Alan thought about his life back on Earth, his small apartment near the university, his research into dead civilizations, his quiet routine of teaching and studying. All of it seemed incredibly distant now, like something that had happened to someone else. "And if I refuse? Then you will be returned to your camp with no memory of this conversation. The protective systems will ensure that you forget everything beyond the middle ring discoveries. You will complete your mission believing that the ethereal mystery remains unsolved. But other humans will come eventually, and some of them might not be as resistant to the knowledge as I am. Yes, that is why we need your help now, while we still have a human who can survive the process." Alan looked around the impossible chamber at the sphere of uploaded consciousness it had once been. A thriving galactic civilization. They had sacrificed everything to protect the galaxy from their own discovery. Now they were asking him to make the same sacrifice. He thought about Zeph-9, trapped in his logical loop outside, about the previous research teams who had returned from the site with broken minds and empty memories, about the billions of conscious beings throughout the galaxy who went about their lives never knowing how close they were to learning a truth that would destroy them. "There's something else, isn't there?" Alan asked. "Something you haven't told me." The sphere pulsed with what might have been regret. "Your species is young and curious. Humans will not stop coming to this place until they solve the mystery completely. Eventually, one of them will succeed in breaching our containment system and spreading the knowledge, unless we act now to prevent it. So this isn't really a choice. It's an inevitability. We prefer to think of it as an opportunity. The chance to ensure that when the truth is finally revealed, it happens in a controlled way that protects as many lives as possible." Alan closed his eyes and felt the weight of the decision crushing down on him. Save his own sanity and condemn future generations to discovery of the devastating truth, or sacrifice himself to strengthen the containment system and protect the galaxy for perhaps thousands of years more. When he opened his eyes again, he had made his choice. The most human choice of all, to do what was right regardless of the personal cost. Tell me what I need to do. The process began immediately. The sphere of light expanded and surrounded Alan, filling his mind with pure information. Not words or pictures, but raw mathematical understanding that burned through his consciousness like liquid fire. He saw the complete structure of awareness, the quantum foundations of thought, and the terrible beauty of the universe's greatest secret. His human brain fought to process the knowledge without breaking apart. Unlike the purely logical minds that had been destroyed by this revelation, Alan's consciousness was flexible enough to bend without snapping. He could know that his thoughts were just chemical reactions, while still experiencing them as real. He could understand that his identity was an illusion, while continuing to exist as Alan Cooper. Your mind is stronger than we expected, the ethereal voices said. Most conscious beings cannot maintain coherent thought while processing this information. Your species may be the key to safely managing this knowledge in the future. Alan felt his sense of self stretching and changing as the full implications of consciousness research flowed into his mind. He understood now why the ethereals had been destroyed by their discovery. For a purely logical species, learning that logic itself was an illusion had been like discovering that mathematics was meaningless. They had lost all foundation for existence, but humans were different. They had always lived with contradictions. They could believe in free will while acknowledging that their actions were shaped by forces beyond their control. They could love someone while knowing that love was just brain chemistry. They could find meaning in a universe that offered no inherent purpose. I can see the flaws in your containment system, Alan said, his voice sounding strange even to himself. Your protective fields are designed to suppress logical thought patterns, but human minds don't work that way. We think with emotions and intuition as much as logic. Your system can't completely block our kind of consciousness. Can you fix it? Alan began working with the facility's quantum systems, integrating human mathematical concepts with ethereal technology. He found that chaos theory and fractal mathematics, uniquely human discoveries, could create more sophisticated protective fields. Instead of simply blocking logical thought, the new system would redirect human curiosity away from dangerous areas, while allowing safe exploration of less critical information. The work required him to think in ways that no human had ever thought before. He had to understand consciousness from both inside and outside simultaneously, seeing himself as both a real person and a quantum illusion. The mental strain was enormous, but his human brain's ability to compartmentalize conflicting ideas allowed him to continue functioning. As he worked, Alan became aware of the uploaded ethereal minds around him. They had been slowly losing their individual identities for 50,000 years, sacrificing their sense of self to maintain the protective systems. Some had already dissolved completely into the collective consciousness. Others clung to fragments of their original personalities, like echoes of people who had once lived. We are grateful, they told him. Your improvements will protect the galaxy for many more millennia, but the process is changing you. Soon you will face the same choice we did. Alan could feel it happening. The deeper he integrated with the facility's systems, the more his human identity began to fade. He was becoming something between organic consciousness and quantum information, existing in a state that had no name in any language. There is one more thing we can offer you, the ethereal said. A way to preserve your sacrifice while protecting your original self. What do you mean? We can copy your consciousness before it fully integrates with our systems. Create a quantum backup that contains all your memories and personality patterns from before you learned the dangerous knowledge. That copy could be downloaded into a cloned body and returned to your normal life with no memory of what happened here. Alan paused in his work, a chance to escape the consequences of his choice, to save both the galaxy and himself. It was tempting, but he sensed there was a catch. The copy would be identical to you in every way, the ethereals continued. Same memories, same personality, same hopes and dreams. For all practical purposes, it would be you. But the original consciousness, the one that made this sacrifice, would remain here forever. So I would die, but another version of me would live. In a sense, though given what we now know about consciousness, the distinction between original and copy may be meaningless. Alan thought about it as he continued upgrading the containment system. Was identity really so important if an exact duplicate would carry on his life? His friends and family would never know the difference. The copy would remember growing up in Ohio, studying archaeology, falling in love with ancient mysteries. It would be him in every way that mattered, but something in his. Human nature rebelled against the idea. Even if consciousness was an illusion, even if identity was just a quantum accident, the experiences that made up his sense of self felt real and important. The Alan Cooper who had made this sacrifice deserved to be remembered, even if only by himself. No, he said finally. Create the copy and send it home, but don't tell it what happened here. Let it live its life believing that the ethereal mystery was never solved. But I'll stay. Someone needs to remember the choice that was made. You will lose yourself eventually. We all do. The knowledge changes us until we forget who we were. Maybe. But humans are stubborn. Maybe I'll last longer than you expect. Alan finished his work on the containment system and felt the facility's protective field strengthen around him. The new quantum barriers would be far more effective against human-style thinking while remaining invisible to conscious observation. Future expeditions would find interesting archaeological evidence, but would be subtly guided away from the dangerous discoveries. Ethereal consciousness began the process of creating Alan's quantum duplicate. As his memories and personality patterns were copied, Alan felt himself becoming less solid, more integrated with the facility's systems. Soon he would exist only as a guardian program, maintaining the protective fields and slowly forgetting his own name. But for now, in these final moments of human identity, he remembered everything. The choice he had made, the reason he had made it, and the billions of conscious beings throughout the galaxy who would continue their lives never knowing how close they had come to learning a truth that would have destroyed them. The duplicate was complete. In a few hours, it would wake up in the camp outside with no memory of the inner sanctum or the terrible knowledge it contained. It would return to Earth believing that the expedition had been a failure, and it would never know that it was actually humanity's greatest hero. Alan felt his consciousness beginning to merge with the ancient, ethereal minds that had made the same sacrifice so long ago. His last coherent thought was a hope that someday, when the galaxy was ready, the knowledge could be safely shared. Until then, he would wait and remember and protect the universe from its own curiosity. The facility continued its eternal vigil, its protective systems stronger than ever, thanks to a human scientist who had chosen to be forgotten so that others could live.